Well, by way of introduction and introducing our message today, I want to say a few words. We're going to be entering into a series that I'm really excited to enter into, and it is a series about money. Now, I see some of you skeptical people. That preacher go. I knew it. All you just need it because the preachers just love money. Let me say this. Jesus, whom you claim to know and love, talked a lot about money. Jesus talked about it more than any other thing in the Gospels, period. 17 of his 38 parables all deal with wealth or money to some degree. Possessions are spoken about in the entire Bible over 2,000 times. That's 3 times more than love. Y'all love love. We always love to talk about love. God is love. Love your neighbors, love people, love God, love yourself. But giving, money, that kind of stuff is talked about 3 times more than love. It's talked about 7 times more than prayer. Which means if the Bible gives space to a topic, it means that it's important. But most times we as people believe that God is only after our souls and God is only caring about what we look like on the inside, and he don't care nothing about our life. He doesn't care nothing about our leisure, and he doesn't care anything about our luxury. God cares about all of you, including your money. So let me go ahead and hit the target on the head. My new members class, there are some here who just finished new members, and I can tell you, I have no issue talking about money. None whatsoever. Here's why. Because I ain't no thief. I ain't stole nobody's money. I just have not. And your perception of me will be what it is of me unless you challenge it. And it just is what it is. But money has a lot to do, and how you deal with money, how you look at money, how you handle money, has a lot to do with your maturity in the faith. And if you can't deal with money the way that Scripture calls you to, I don't care how much you go to church, I don't care how many ministries you are part of, you are not as spiritually mature as you think you are if you cannot trust the Lord your God in the area of money. So over the next several weeks, we're going to deal with this topic, and we're going to have some fun dealing with it. And another thing, I told 7:30, I'm personally excited. You know, Sister Julie Henderson is our treasurer, and Deacon Lane, chairman of the deacon board. You know, what excites me about talking about it in this moment, the church ain't in an emergency. God has been good to our church. Since many of you who are members ain't been to a church meeting a second, I'll tell you, our income has increased 6% over what it was last year because God has been good to us. So don't hear me as like, oh, we must be in some emergency. We must not be able to pay a bill, so he gonna try to cajole us into some money, you know. No, again, part of my job is as a pastor is to push you towards obedience to Christ, to look like him in all areas. And most times, most Christians look like him in a lot of ways, but not with our checkbooks. So we're going to talk about it, and I'm really excited to jump into it. We're entering into a series called Show Me the Money. You heard it, Show Me the Money. If you got your Bibles, won't you open up and meet me in Luke chapter 16. Luke chapter 16. So I was like, Luke chapter 16, when you're there, say, I'm there. And it reads as follows. Now he said to the disciples, he being Jesus, there was a rich man, say a rich man, who received an accusation that his manager was squandering his possessions. And so he called the manager in and he asked, now what's this I hear about you? Give an account of your management because you can no longer work for me. Then the manager said to himself, oh man, what will I do since my master is taking the management away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I am too proud to beg. I know what I'll do. When I'm removed from my position, I figured it out. People will welcome me into their homes with this. So he summoned each one of his master's debtors. How much do you owe my master? He asked one. 100 measures of olive oil. He said, all right, take your invoice, he told him. Sit down quickly and write 50. To the next one, he said, how much do you owe? 100 measures of wheat, he said. Okay, you take your invoice and you mark down 80. The master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly. Hear Jesus' words. For the children of this age are more shrewd than the children of light in dealing with their own people. And I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of worldly wealth, so that when it fails, because it will, they may welcome you into eternal dwellings. Whoever is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. And whoever is unrighteous in very little is also unrighteous in much. So, if you have not been faithful with worldly wealth, who will trust you with what is genuine? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to someone else, who will give you what is your own? Verse 13 says this, no servant can serve two masters, since either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot serve both God and money. I want to speak on the topic this morning, show me the money, and the part one is eternity and money. Eternity and money. You may be seated as we go before the throne of grace. God in heaven, we thank you so much for your abundant grace toward us. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for your faithfulness. We thank you for your kindness. God, we endeavor to uncover this topic of money. It is one that gives people great anxiety. It makes people afraid. It makes people even look at the church suspiciously. But God, I pray, my prayer, God, is that you help us to see that you care about our money. So I pray, God, that you would give us ears to hear you this morning. Not just ears to hear you, but hands to grab a hold of your word and feet to run after in obedience. God, we don't want to be people who just know stuff and do little with what we know, but help us to be obedient to it. Then I pray for me, God, give me poise, give me power to preach your word. Help me to stand flat-footed on your word, to declare what you are saying in this time to your people. In Jesus' name we pray this prayer. You agree with me? Won't you say amen? As I was preparing this sermon, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who put me on to this legend I had heard about before, but I decided this morning I wanted to share this legend with you. Legend has it that on one day, a millionaire and a missionary died within hours of each other. And on that same day, they both made their upward journey to heaven. When they got to the pearly gates, they were greeted by St. Peter himself. And his job was to welcome them. His job was also to give them an abbreviated tour. And then his real job was to take them to their eternal accommodations. They got in the same chariot because the millionaire and the missionary, they arrived together. And as they made their way down the street to the missionary's house, she discovers that she does not have a bungalow, but she has a mansion. She is absolutely blown away by this. When she looks at how large it is and how luxurious her spot is, she breaks out into praise, literally. 45 whole minutes she spends worshiping God. She cannot contain herself from doing victory laps. She passed out about 6 times. Peter had to pick her up and she fainted another time. She is going in. Now, while she's standing there, of course, the millionaire, he's looking and he's like, oh, shucks. If she got this, I can only imagine what my digs is going to look like. The millionaire says, yeah, you know, I could see it. Surely my earthly riches, and you know that little tip I threw God every now and then, I'm sure that's going to mean something. My philanthropic donations to my charities of choice, my HBCU or other nonprofits, surely these would mean that my accommodations will be flyer than hers. The old missionary, there's something you need to know about her, though. This woman dedicated her life, her legacy, and a luxury. She dedicated it all to the Lord during her time on earth. She didn't have much, but what she had, she gave sacrificially from what she had. She would send money all the way back to the south side of Chicago to her church. She didn't just tithe on her money, but she gave an offering to help the church do whatever the church needed to do. And you know, she was blessed for it. She believed the Bible when it said to her, the one who sows sparingly, they're going to reap sparingly. She believed the scriptures when it says the ones who sows bountifully, you know, they're going to reap bountifully. She had read it, and she believed it. She trusted that the Lord would give. Now, there were times where she did not enjoy the small luxuries that you and I enjoy, but truth be told, she thinks back over her life and she recognizes that the Lord met every one of her needs according to his riches. She didn't always have what she wanted, but sometimes she had so much that she couldn't even consume it all. And like all of us, that fateful day had come where it was time to fold up her tent and head up to the Lord, to his mansion that he had built for her. She did not expect this mansion because she ain't make no money on this side. That helps you understand why she's shouting, why she's rejoicing. Peter interrupts her shout. Shirley, Sister Shirley, we got to go. We can't stay here in your praise break. In fact, you about to have your first worship service where you see Jesus face to face. But before that time comes, I got to take Brother Banks to his house now. Brother Banks gets back in the car, and he's excited. He's ready to go, and they pull off and land in a whole nother section of heaven. The millionaire, he started to calculate his square footage because, you know, he was a wealthy real estate developer. After all, he had built homes in London. He had built apartments in New York and condos on the North Shore. He even had a few estates that he was responsible for building down in Mokina. With all of his wealth on earth, he never gave much to church. He was on the road quite a bit, flying from here and there. He never had the opportunity to learn what God expected from him with his money. And so he would toss a few hundred here, a few hundred there. I mean, that was a few hundred in comparison to his millions upon millions. And the moment came when they pulled up in front of his house. You have to see his face. He sees it, and he looks. Peter, keep going. Your GPS got the wrong spot. Peter, what the heck is this? Peter says, this is your house. This is your house in heaven. But it's a little shanty. It's a couple of windows, really small, no adornments, no granite, no quartz, no hardwood floors, no flat screen TVs. It was disappointing to this millionaire. He said, Peter, there got to be a mistake. Peter said, you know what? Sometimes I get the names wrong. Let me run through the list. Let me see. Is your name really Jerome Lawrence Banks III? Yeah, that's my name. You were a member of Compassion, right? Yeah, I was a member of Compassion. You were a part of a lot of ministries there. Yeah, when I was there, I was. You sang with the choir. Yeah, a little bit sometimes. You grew up in Chicago, and your people were from Mississippi. Yeah, that's true too. You went to Stanford. You became a millionaire in real estate, right? Well, bruh, this is you. Banks says, well, what is this? And Peter looked at him, and he looked at his giving record, and he said, James, this is the best we could do with what you sent up here. In fact, we threw in a little on the side. We laugh at that, but we don't understand that that's how God sees your money. That whenever you are giving, you ain't giving to just hold up a nonprofit called the church. That when you are giving, God is crediting your account. And when he is crediting your account, he is considering what your reward will be on that side of this life. Yeah, you get there by faith in Jesus, but he is counting on saying, what will your reward be there? Here it is, friends. Your giving and my giving has eternal significance. That when God looks at our money, there is eternal significance tied to it. But in order for us to understand this, you've got to flip how you see yourself with money and understand who you are with the money. We ain't nothing but managers. A manager is not an owner. A manager serves at the behest of the owner. The manager's job is to care for what belongs to the owner, not to go after what he wants. Jesus enters into this story where he tells a story of a rich landowner and a steward. The landowner, he was really wealthy according to verse 1. He had a whole lot of a whole lot. The landowner, he was absent. He had to travel a lot. And so he entrusted his possessions to someone that we call a manager, but it was really called a steward. He gives the steward his possessions, not for the steward's spending, but for the steward to use the resources the way the manager wants them to be used. Now you got to see the manager. He grew up broke on the low end. He sees all of this money, and he says, I done struck jackpot. In a minute, a twinkling of an eye, his hands hold enormous financial and administrative power. He ain't grow up with nothing, but now he got a lot. And verse 1 tells us what he did with that lot. That he squandered his possessions, literally meaning he took it and he spread it around with no purpose whatsoever. It didn't matter what the master wanted. Didn't matter if the master wanted it invested. Didn't matter if the master wanted him to use it to acquire more land. Didn't matter if the master wanted to use it to multiply on itself. He simply said, I got this money and I'm going to spend it like it's mine. He paid for his vacation. He paid for his Gucci. He paid for his house and his second house. He paid for his fourth car. He paid for his mama's crib. He paid for all of his luxury in spending his money. He forgot that that he was merely the manager and he was not the owner. Hear me, friends. You and I are not the owners of our money. God owns everything. Psalm 24:1 says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. I know that we don't live in a day where people carry cash. You may not use checks. You may not even see your money. But even if your money is on a piece of paper, if it's electronic, if it's cryptocurrency, if it's in this world, and it is, it means God owns it. This means every dollar you get, even when you feel like you work for it, God has given it to you, not for you necessarily, but for you to steward it. But you know what we do? We get his money, and we never prioritize him. Let's just keep it 100. Some of y'all, you know, just look at me. You ain't got a nod, yay, nay. You get your check. And while you with your lips say, God means the world to me, you cut up a large portion of your pie and it goes to your kicking it money. You cut up another large portion and that goes to buy you several new fits. You put aside a bunch of money and that goes to your splurging spree. Then when it comes to God, if you got anything left, you toss a couple dollars thinking you gonna shut up his holler. But God gives you money. Yeah, he provides for you. Yeah, he wants you to enjoy it. But he gives it to you to use for his purposes because you and I are mere managers. We are not the owners of it. But get it? Because we are stewards, we are mere managers of the money we got. We are accountable to the master. The master hears an accusation in verse 2 about this man's dishonest mishandling, and he calls him up. He says, you come in my office. You give me an account for what you've been doing with my money. Although the manager wasn't present, he wasn't gone forever. He gave the man this job, and he expected the man to do this job with his money the way he wanted him to deal with that money. Instead, the man was more concerned about what he wanted and wished for over what the master wanted and wished for. Now he has to stand and to give an account. the man drew a massive disconnect between what he did with his money now and the bearing it had on when he had to be accountable for it later. Before you point your judgmental fingers, point it back at yourself, because we do it too. We believe that our money and the handling of it does not matter to God. We believe that as long as we sitting up in church and we can sing to some songs and cry to Kanye's new album, or we can promise to be in Bible study or be a good Christian, that God don't care about your pocketbook, your debit card, your cryptocurrency, or your cash. But God gives you what you have. He gives me what I have, and we are accountable to him, and one day he will ask us about it and say, what have you done with my money? You don't believe me? Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 to 30, Jesus tells a story about a rich man who gave some talents or a share of money to his servants when he went on a trip. He gave 1 talent to one, 2 talents to another, and to 5 talents to another. To the one he gave 2 talents to, that dude took it and he turned it to 4. To the one he gave 5, he took it and he turned it to 10. But to the one he gave 1 to, he took it and he dug a hole in the ground and he shoved it down there. He said, I'm not going to get this money up because it can be used for something later. I ain't going to risk investing it somewhere where I may not ever see return. I'm going to take it and shove it down in the ground. And when you read that, I challenge you to read that when you get home. The master gets belligerent. He says, now you know that I'm petty. You know that I reap in fields I have not sown in. You know that I would have rather have seen you multiply my money than to sit on my money. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take your money, give it to somebody else, and I'm going to kick you out the house. In like fashion, friends, God holds us accountable with what we do with the money he gives us. Do we use it for our desires, or do we use them for his? Our money has eternal significance because we will stand before God and receive reward for what we have done on this side of life, and our money has eternal significance. What does it mean? This text is tailored to teach us that we must let money's eternal significance impact your handling of God's resources. I got 3 very simple, practical pieces that this text throws out to us. How do we live rightly with God's money? Here's the first one. Use money as a tool for the gospel of Jesus. The manager in the story gets a surprising thought. He recognizes that he is unable to change his past record and accounting of how he dealt with that money. But now he knows he can control the future. In verses 3 to 8, he devises a plan to say, since I'm about to get fired and I'm losing my job, I'm going to make friends so that when I don't have a house no more, they're going to take me in. He goes to one guy, he says, yo, how much you owe my boss? Oh, you owe him 100 pieces of olive oil? Okay, set aside, give him 50. You owe him some wheat, 100 of it? Okay, set that right on your invoice and you give me 50. I'll make sure your debt is settled. Jesus says in verse 8 that the master praised his dishonest deeds because it was shrewd or it was wise. And just when the disciples looked at Jesus and said, oh, you about to send that man to hell. Oh, Jesus, you know that man a mess. He on his way there. Jesus says, pay attention to this dude. He says, because the people of this generation, they smarter than y'all. He says, those of you who claim to walk in the light and know me and love me, they know how to deal with their money and people better than you do. He says, pay attention. Here's how you do it. Make friends with your money because it's going to run out. And when your money runs out, your friends will give you an eternal dwelling. Here's what he's doing. He's demonstrating the eternal significance of your earthly money. Isn't it interesting? Because your money don't go with you when you die. Some of us are so busy trying to hoard it and hold it. Some of us are trying to keep it and get it. And your money, no matter how much you amass, it ain't going with you when you die. I know that there was Fluky Stokes and they put all that stuff on his body in that coffin, and he got buried with jewels and buried with money. But guess where that money is? It's in the dirt, because your money does not go with you. But your money, as it is spent on this side, it still has eternal significance on that side. Jesus calls this money unrighteous, a dakios, because money oftentimes is used for our own selfish benefit. Don't look at me like I'm crazy. Some of us use our money only on our creature comforts. We ain't giving it to nobody. Don't ask me to put nothing in no basket when it passed, because I'm trying to count my money and see how much chicken I'm going to get after church with my money. We use it to turn up. We use it for more stuff. We use it for things to insulate us in this life. And Jesus says, don't sow all your money there, but use your money for the making of friends in eternity. When you make friends in eternity, you are making people who are friends of yours that are going to be in heaven because they have heard the gospel of Jesus. Money is not to be used only for your pleasure, but it should be used to invest in eternity, to serve people, and to reach people for Jesus. Warren Wiersbe once said this: the only difference between men and boys is that men buy more expensive toys. So many of us use money investing in mess and junk. The latest this, the nicest that, the new comfort piece, and that's all we giving our money to. I ain't saying those things are bad, but all those things will fade away. But the money that God gives you, God is expecting to see you contribute that, let me make it very plain and clear, to your church. To see that your church continues to reach people for Jesus Christ, to grow them up, to be passionate for God and compassionate to people. God wants to see you do that, because one day you're going to go to heaven and somebody's going to walk up to you and say, you might not have known me, but that money you gave, that little bit you struggled to put in that basket, God used that money to save me and my whole household. God says, when you give on this side, when you give to the local church, you are giving to the mission of Jesus Christ to see lives change and people transformed. It has eternal significance as you make friends. But let me say this. This making friends ain't no just toss a few. This is generous giving. Be generous in your giving to people. Be generous in your giving to God. Be generous and God will reward you on this side and eternally. Not only do you use your money for the gospel of Jesus, here's the second one, but use your money as a showcase of your faithfulness to God. Let me tell you what I'm not saying, because some of you are arrogant. Let's just keep it 100. You love to show people you giving. Girl, I paid my tithes, my whole 10%, and you want everybody to see you give. And in fact, you want everybody in the church to know that you give, or that you are among a group of people who give in the same way that you give. What I'm talking about here is your giving is a showcase to God about your faithfulness to Him. But let me say this, your faithfulness to God, get ready, has zero to do with how much money you got. It ain't about your money, it's about where your heart is. You don't believe me? Verse 10, he says it. He says, if you're going to be faithful with this little bit, you will be faithful with a lot of it. But if you're going to be unfaithful with this little bit, you ain't going to be faithful when you have a lot of it. This means that for the believer, your lack of giving is not a financial one. It is a heart issue one. It proves when you say, I ain't giving, even when you don't make a lot of money, it is saying that I am more faithful to me and to my money than I am to you, God. But let me take it deeper. It means this, that if you had $5 and you were unfaithful with that, you're going to be unfaithful with 5,000. You will find a way. Some of y'all be like, if I just had more money, if God just opened up the windows and poured so much down, I would give to God. No, you won't. If you ain't gave with your little bit, you ain't giving with a little more. Because all you gonna do is find a way to take every penny you have gained to spend it on yourself. You and I are selfish with a little, we will be selfish with a lot. But when we're generous with a little, we're gonna be generous with a whole bunch. But it's a faithfulness thing, it's a heart thing. But let me take it deeper. God is actually watching your heart. That's a scary proposition. Because we love to say only God judges. But that's a scary proposition. Because that means, yeah, ain't nobody else got a heaven or hell to put you in. But it also means that the one who knows you better than you, the one who sees our motives, the one who sees our wicked thoughts, he also judges. God is watching your heart. This is in verse 12 and 11 and 12. He says, if you ain't been faithful with your money, Who will trust you with the genuine stuff? Who will trust you? It is a future orientation. It is Jesus giving them a hint to say, if you can't be trusted with your money here, God can't trust you with what's coming there. He takes it even further. He says, but if you have been faithful with if you have not been faithful with what belongs to someone else, God's money, who's going to give you your own? Again, who will? Jesus is saying that God is the one who gives the genuine gift, and God is watching from heaven, watch this, and he's keeping record on how much money you give now. This doesn't sit comfortable, because we love to shout about I'm saved by grace through faith in Christ, and that's true. Your giving don't get you to heaven. In fact, if you emptied your bank account without Jesus, you just emptied your bank account. Your giving doesn't promise you a spot in heaven. It is only by faith in Christ Jesus and what he has done on the cross that gets you into heaven. But can I tell you this? Every last one of us will stand before God and will be judged. 2 Corinthians 5:10, Paul says this, that we will all stand before Christ, and we will be repaid for the good and the bad. This means we will stand before Jesus, who will Megatron our lives before us and will force us to give an account for everything we say. Let me put a parenthetical there. If people just caught a second of that, people would be nicer to each other. Christians would watch their words when they understand that Jesus is keeping tabs on what you say. Jesus is keeping tabs on what you do. And how you act on this side determines what you got on that side, because this side is merely practice for that side. When you prioritize in your giving, you are showcasing to God, I'm faithful to you, and I'm being faithful with your money. And God watches our faithfulness with money now to determine how faithful we'll be with what he gives us later. There was a little girl who one day her mother gave her $2 bills and said, when you go to church, I want you to put $1 in the offering plate, and you can use the other $1 to go buy candy. And think about it, boy, you can get a lot of candy for $1. Not the good kind, but at least some candy. She takes these $2 and she rushes out the door, down the stairs. She turns the corner up the street and she trips on the curb. To catch herself, she lets go of the money, and the wind begins to grab the money. She catches one before the other one flies away. And she stands up, she dusts her knees off, and she says to God, God, that $1 that flew away was your $1. Isn't it funny that it's always God's money that flies away? That whenever we must cut, God's money is the first to get cut out. This ain't no financial question. This is an unfaithful heart question. And God watches your and my heart, and he notes our faithfulness to him with our money. And guess what, friends? God keeps many receipts. Every time we choose to cut God out, it doesn't matter what your lips say. What your actions are saying is, God, I am unfaithful to you, and I am unfaithful to your money. God is watching us with our money, waiting to determine how much he's going to give us to heaven. Doesn't matter how much you shout and say, I love Jesus, but if your pocketbook ain't reflective of your mouth, you have just said words, because you are not faithful with God if you cannot show faithfulness with your money. It goes, because today, some of us in our hearts are saying, no, I'm faithful to God. I don't want to hear your words. You're going to have a moment at the end of service to demonstrate it to God, your faithfulness to him and his money. Here's the third thing, though. Not only do you use it to showcase your faithfulness to God, but you use money as a demonstration of your devotion to God. Jesus makes one final application, and it's very practical, but oh, it's so difficult. He essentially says in verse 13, he tells us to serve God and not our money. But lean forward. You and I love money. Don't act like you don't. The church is not exempt from loving money. Jesus says in verse 14, and then he called the Pharisees money lovers. That is to suggest that even those who know God love money. That is because money has a psychological and an emotional hold on us. That money keeps you up at night. Money makes you pace the floor at night. I see you looking like, preacher, that ain't me. Let your 401k plan get messed with. Let your bank account deplete to zero. Let someone stick you up and take your last dollar. You ain't gonna sleep. Some of you gonna get mad at God and blame God for you losing your money. Because money has a hold on us because we love it. Let me take it even deeper. You know you love it. Because whenever it's time to give, I feel it too. When we're saying, I'm going to give God my money, you are automatically confronted with the idea, there's so much more I can do with this money. Keep it 100. You ain't got to be honest with me. Just look at me in the face. You know I'm telling the truth. Every time for those who do give, you say to yourself, yeah, God, I love you, but Jesus, I can do more. Because you and I love money. But here's what he's saying. You're going to have to serve something. Because humans cannot have divided loyalty. You and I don't have the ability to be faithful and loyal to two competing things. We have to choose one. He says it. You cannot serve both God and man. The word for cannot is where we get the word dynamite from. Dunamis. It's the Greek word which doesn't mean blow stuff up, but it literally means you don't have the ability to. That God has made you in such a way where you have to choose one or you have to choose other. But let's be real. We love to do two things at once. Kelly gonna disagree with me with this, but I know I'm right. I can drive and talk at the same time. Brother Rizzo, she think I can't. But I can. I talk on the phone all the time while I'm driving. Now, I get distracted at times, but I could drive and talk at the same time, Kelly. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. You know how I know? Because some of y'all walked in and you swallowed your gum when you sat down because you were like, I'm in the house of God, so I can't chew gum. You can chew gum. We just don't want you putting it on the seat and on the floor, so I'd rather you swallow it before spitting it out because somebody got to scrape that up. But you know, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You know something else we can do at the same time? We can wash dishes and talk on the phone. Can't we, Sister Jones? Some of us know it. Girl, let me tell you about what Sally said. What you do? I'm just washing these dishes. I'm just putting together a meal. I'm just sweeping it. You know it's true. You can talk on the phone and wash dishes at the same time. But can I tell you what you cannot do? You cannot be devoted to money and to God at the exact same time. That one has competing values over the other. That you are going to choose one or you're going to choose the other. But you cannot say you choose both at the same time. I always love it when Negroes say this. I didn't mean to use the word, but I have to say it. In fact, when people say this, I don't get judgmental. I promise I don't. But I kind of smile in my soul because it just is interesting, you know. And whenever they say this, the scholar in me wants to ask deeper questions to understand what I can't quite see. And they say, you know the statement. Every time they stand up, first of all, I want to give honor to God, who is the head of my life. Now, I don't know if that's true, and I'm not here to judge nobody who says it. I don't know if that's true, but I just think it's funny when they say it. And you know the question I always ask myself whenever they say it? Show me your giving record. Because Jesus says where your heart is, your treasure is too. That if God is who you say he is to you, then your giving record reflects it. But if you say that God is all that and a bag of chips to you, and you barely tossing a dollar and you making more than that, then surely God ain't all you thought he was. You are far more devoted to what you got than you are to God. You don't have to tell me who you serve. In fact, don't come up to me after church talking about I serve God. I don't care to hear it. This is how you prove it. You prove you serve God by showing you're devoted to him, by worshiping him with your money. That means you set aside intentionally and you give God your money. Every time you give, you are not giving God an IOU so that he owes you something. Every time you give, you are not making a down payment or a deposit on your next car or on your next house. But every time you give, every time you write that check and type your number in or email your money through Zelle, every time you present to God, you are saying, God, this is my best offering that I can give to you. It goes far beyond my words. It goes far beyond my I loves you, because I love my money and I'm giving it to you to say it's yours. But I see you. You're looking at me because you don't see no Jesus in this. Sounds sort of moralistic and do the right things and press the right formula and you got your blessing from God. Well, since you asked me, I'll take you to the cross. There is a God who demonstrated his love not with words but by giving. He took his son Jesus, the second person of the triune Godhead, and he cloaked him in flesh. And he did not give a 10% of his son, but he gave a whole son who came and lived a whole life and bared on his back and in his skin your whole sinful behind, all of our mess, all of our discouragement, all of our depression, all of our hopelessness, every wrong we've ever done. God gave us Jesus and put it on his back. And guess what he did? Jesus ain't give 10% of his life. He ain't give $1 of his life, but Jesus gave his whole life. Jesus hung there on the cross and he died. He bled and he died, and they punched a hole in his side to make sure he wasn't alive, because he gave his whole self. Here's the imperative for you. The gospel of Jesus, if it is true, which it is, the gospel of Jesus, which shows us a God who ain't asking you to do something that he himself ain't done. Have you paused for a second and thought about how God gave you what you got? When you were unemployed and you could not find a job, God gave you a job. When you thought you could not get promoted because someone else got the spot over you, God gave you a promotion. When you were looking for where your next dollar was going to come from, you couldn't hustle it. You couldn't pull up no dirt to find it. God gave you the money. Here it is. We serve a God who is a giving God, and he don't call us to do something that he himself does not do. Your giving has eternal significance. You cannot just think in your mind that you are maturing in Christ because you know stuff, but it ain't reflected in your money. You cannot say, I know and love God, but you don't give to nothing that God is saying, give my money to. You cannot say, I am growing in my faith, but you ain't growing in your giving. Because there is nothing in this world that requires more trust than your money. We know it's true. People in the Great Depression, they ain't get no money to no banks. Where they put it? In a mattress. Because money is serious to us. Well, I'll close on this. I've been on cloud 9 this whole week. I've been listening to Kanye West's album on rotation, and I see your faces. Some of you, how you gonna talk about that cussing man who, you know, it's a wonderful thing to see that his album highlights Jesus at the center of it, and a lot of Christians have Jesus on the periphery, but I'll keep moving. But one of the things he says in this album, he talks about how he pays a lot of taxes, like 50% of his money went to taxes, and how he still had to give his tithes. Then he goes on to say, honor the Lord with the first of your money. That's interesting because that's Bible. To say that you understand that money has significance is to say I honor him with the first, not the second. With the first, not the third. The first, not the final. I set aside my best gift and I surrender it to you. I had a root canal this week, so I could talk all day. But I'll stop there. Interesting close, ain't it? You earn my money has eternal significance. And God credits your eternal account. Now, I see some of your faces because you're young. I ain't going to see eternity for a while. You might think that. Could be tomorrow. And then there's some of you who you're closer to that step than others. That's also what that is. It just is what it is. We all going to get there one day. But I don't know about you. I want God to see my giving record. And I can attest to you. I ain't telling you nothing I don't do. I mean, Kelly and I made the commitment I told our new members class to tithe when we ain't had nothing. I mean, when I was making $4,000 a year. And we said we're going to live on this 90 or even more, less than this, because we want to honor God with our stuff. When you understand that money has eternal significance, that God will reward you on that, that's just the weirdness of God's economy. That to those who hoard it and amass it, he says, you had your reward on this side. But to the one who sacrificed and gave it, this is all yours. Let's stand to our feet.